This story unfolds in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, in the late 1800s. So we're going way back here. It was deep rural Appalachian region, and this was a time before modern forensic science, of course, before standardized autopsies, before domestic violence was widely recognized as a crime. Doctors were often neighbors, coroners were sometimes elected officials with minimal medical training, and women had little legal protection, especially inside marriage. And death, especially the death of a young woman, was often explained away way too quickly. I also want to make something else clear here. So Zona Heaster Shue is often only remembered as the Greenbrier Ghost. But before she was a ghost spirit, she was a person. She was a daughter, a young bride, a woman with a future that ended far too soon. So tonight, we're not just telling a ghost story. We're telling Zona's story. Before Zona Heaster became the center of one of the most unsettling cases in American history, she was just a young woman trying to build a life. Alva Zona Heaster, full name, was born in Greenbrier County, West Virginia in the early 1870s. She grew up in a quiet rural area where everyone knew everyone, where reputation mattered and privacy was rare. She was known as Zona to her family and friends, described as gentle, polite, and somewhat reserved. She wasn't someone who craved attention. She wasn't known for causing trouble. She was, by all accounts, ordinary. And sometimes it's the most ordinary lives that end in the most extraordinary ways, and not necessarily in a good way. One of the most important relationships in the story is the bond between Zona and her mother, Mary Jane Heaster. Mary was a strong-willed woman, practical, devout. She had raised Zona largely on her own after separating from her husband. In a time when women had few options, Mary worked hard to provide stability for her daughter. And by many accounts, the two were very close. Mary trusted her instincts, especially when it came to her child, and those instincts would begin screaming the moment Zona met a man named Edward Erasmus Stribling Trout Shue, long name, but for the sake of this, we'll call him either Edward or Trout. So Edward arrived in Greenbrier County not long before his marriage to Zona. He was a blacksmith by trade, handsome enough, charismatic when he wanted to be, but he carried something with him that most people in town didn't know about at first, a past. Trout Shue had already been married twice before Zona. His first marriage ended in divorce, something that at that time was considered scandalous. His first wife accused him of cruelty. Then his second wife died. She reportedly died after being struck by a falling brick while Edward was working on a building. Now, accidents do happen, but when you place that death next to what would later happen to Zona, it becomes impossible to ignore that pattern. Mary Jane Heaster did not trust Edward. From the moment she met him, something felt wrong. She objected to the marriage openly. According to accounts, Mary warned Zona not to marry him, rather. She felt he was controlling, secretive, and capable of violence. But Zona was young, in love, and like many women of her time, marriage wasn't just a choice. It was a path to security. So Zona and Edward married in October of 1896. The wedding itself seemed normal on the surface, but details surrounding it would later take on a disturbing significance. Edward insisted that Zona wear a high-collar dress, not just for the wedding, but often afterward as well. He was reportedly possessive. He didn't like Zona speaking freely with others, and neighbors later recalled that Zona's demeanor began to change. People who knew Zona before marriage noticed a large difference. She became quieter, more withdrawn. She smiled less, and she stopped visiting as often. Now, in today's language, we might call these warning signs. But in the late 1800s, a woman's struggles inside her marriage were just rarely questioned. What happened behind closed doors stayed behind closed doors.